Mommy School Vlog, and for today's video we are going to explore the whole corner of my house, including the outside, to look for something that is related to the 4 patterns that has been discussed 2 weeks ago, which is the symmetry, the fractal, spiral, and tessellation. But before we will start looking for some of these examples, let's define first what is pattern. So a pattern is a thing that is repeated, recurring arrangement, form, or design following a rule of a sequence. If the set of numbers are related to each other in a rule, then the rule or a manner is called a pattern. So let's now define the first that includes the classifications of the most common patterns in nature, which is the symmetry. So what is symmetry? Symmetry is a pattern that shows reflections of images, and we have 2 different kinds of symmetry, namely the radial symmetry, or a symmetry formed around the central axis, and the bilateral symmetry, or a concept that 2 opposite sides have identical features. So an example of this pattern is the body of my pet cat. Hi Percy! And also another example for this is my anti-radiation eyeglasses. So these 2 doors shows reflection to each other. So it is an example of a symmetry. And those examples are in bilateral symmetry. So next, let's explore a radial symmetry. So I found something here that is related to a radial symmetry. So this LEC of this fan is considered as an example of radial symmetry because it is formed around the central axis. And these rows also an example of a radial symmetry. So we've now done defining and exploring some examples of symmetry. It's time for us to move on to our next pattern in nature, which is the fractal. But first, we are now defining fractal. Fractal, is a pattern which repeats at progressively smaller sizes and angles. So an example of this pattern is this one. This leaf shows a fractal pattern because the pattern is repeated progressively in smaller sizes and angles. And also this leaf as an example of a fractal pattern. This keychain is also an example of a fractal pattern. This papaya leaf is also showing a fractal pattern. Considering this leaf is also a fractal because aside from the pattern form itself, it has also a pattern in a leaf. And now, let's explore the other pattern in nature, and that is a spiral. So what is spiral? Spiral is a pattern that moves around a central point and continuously widening. So an example of this pattern is this mosquito killer or the mosquito coil. And when the mosquito coil is burned and turned into ashes, the ashes itself form also a spiral pattern. And another example of this spiral pattern is the brake plate. Oh look! My charger cable wire is forming a spiral pattern. And this USB port is also an example of a spiral. Last but not the least is the tessellation. So a tessellation is a pattern that repeats figures closely fitting together with no gaps in between. And the example of this pattern is a set of tiles on my floor. The wallpaper sticker also shows tessellation pattern. The grills of the windows is also showing tessellation patterns. Considering these blocks under my fan is also showing tessellation patterns. And this metal screen is also an example of tessellation. So that's how I gave examples to the most common patterns in nature that only can see in my house, inside and outside. So So I hope you have learned something today, and I hope I gave you enough examples to enlighten yourself of these common patterns in nature. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great learning days, and God bless us all. Bye!